Christmas is right around the corner, so I'm finishing up a Christmas double spread that we started last week. And there's a lot on this page to cover, so let's get started. Hello colorists, welcome to PencilStash, a weekly show all about coloring. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing to get all the new content, and be sure to hit that like button if you're enjoying my videos. Welcome back colorists. We're just a few days from Christmas, so we're going to be finishing up the page that we started last week. And in case you missed that, I will link to that video in the description and in the corner if you want to check it out. And here's where we left off. And in the last video, we really focused on all of these colors that we'd planned across the page, not only ensuring that the green was equally balanced from left to right, but also trying to make each one different, yet cohesive to the overall aesthetic. So we're planning to continue that today with all of our other colors too. And in full transparency, this is a page that I did not plan out beforehand. Now, sometimes I'll take a few minutes before starting a page and I'll really give some thought to the color palette, where I'm planning out kind of where I'm going to place all of those colors, just to get a better plan in place rather than flying by the seat of my pants. However, that's exactly what I ended up doing on this page. Now, I knew I wanted to fill it with greens and reds and golds and some neutrals, and I knew that I wanted to add in my metallic chalk markers too. So working with a fairly limited color palette, you can sort of get away with a little less planning out of your colors. So right now I'm adding in one of those neutrals that I mentioned. Here in the wood beams and in those wooden slats of the table that all of our nutcrackers are sitting on. With how busy and big this double spread page is, incorporating neutrals like browns and grays and beiges can really add some calmness. It lets those objects on the page be the true focal point instead of all of the objects kind of trying to compete with one another for your eye's attention. So really, really good idea to incorporate some of those neutrals just to kind of balance out all of the colors that I'm sure you're tempted to throw onto a page. And just like we did with our greens, I'm going to be adding in my brown across the page as well. Like in these pretzels up here in the corner. Now these were super, super fun to color. I don't know why I really like coloring food. It's one of my favorite things. And it's really fun too to add in some of the salt on there with your white Posca pen. And I'll do the same thing on these bread rolls here. Then I'm going to try to balance that out by bringing those same browns to the opposite side, the left side of our double spread as well. Coloring the Christmas tree pots in the same palette of those creams and the browns. And don't forget to shade here too. You know, these tree branches come out quite a bit, where it would shade onto the pot. So I'm really trying to add in some of that shading just to kind of sell that three-dimensional effect that will really bring life and weight to your objects. And we'll make these shapes up here on this garland into pine cones. Not really sure what they are. I think they're pine cones, but we're just going to go with it using two different browns and then a little dollop of that white Posca pen at the tips. And then we'll do the same thing to this little frame down here. And what I'm doing is I'm going around the page looking for things that would sort of obviously or traditionally be colored in browns, like the bread and the pretzels. So I'm letting those objects sort of determine my color palette and my placement for the most part. Now I'll do the same thing with some reds. And again, don't forget to balance them evenly out across the two pages. I mean, you certainly don't have to do that. I mean, I'm not telling you that you have to, but it is what I like to do. It might just be my OCD kicking in. Then later, on the objects that don't have that kind of go-to color or go-to color scheme, that's where I'm going to fill in and have some fun. But for now, I just kind of like to get my foundational items sort of established with the colors that I know that I'm going to use, and then I just fill in the gaps later. Now this serves to kind of help focus me on a very busy page like this one. And if I just did each object from left to right, just kind of, moving from object to object, from one side of the page to the other, and I didn't bounce around, I think I'd feel a lot more kind of I went. And I think that my color choices would just, I don't know, just wouldn't be as cohesive. It's kind of like taking a test. You kind of run through the questions that you know the answers to first, and then you come back to focus on the questions that you couldn't quite answer yet, just to put a little bit more thought into them. I kind of plan my coloring pages much the same way. I'm also using my white Posca pen to add in little highlights as I go, instead of doing it all at the end like I used to do. Now, this paint dries so quickly that really isn't an issue. So, knock on wood, I haven't run the side of my hand through any wet paint yet, but it's just a matter of time. Now I'm going to bust out those metallic chalk markers that I mentioned. Now these are made by a company called Chalkola, but you can get them, pretty much anywhere. But Chalkola sent these to me a year ago or so, and they come in like 10 different colors, but the metallic gold, the silver, and the red are my favorite. So these will add great little accents on all of my objects spread across the page, and it'll bring a little kind of holiday shimmer to it too. And now your markers, they might go over those black lines that the artist gave us. And if that bugs you, you can also go back in after that chalk marker dries with a fine liner like the Sharpie one that I'm using here, and just kind of add those lines back in. Now, my silver marker here is much more prevalent that happens with than the other colors. So, the silver is kind of my worst offender. But adding in those black lines here just kind of brings that shape back. So I'm sort of at the point now on the page where the items left that I haven't colored yet are really just kind of up to whatever whim or fancy I feel like in terms of color. So I'm just going to go around the page now, filling in those objects with whatever I feel like. And you can choose to add in new colors here, introduce some variation, but I chose to stick with the colors that I already pulled in my Christmas color palette family. Oh, and by the way, if you're curious, all of the colors that I used on this page will be listed in the description box below. Now, this is the only time that I'm pulling out my blue colored pencil here, as for some reason I cannot figure out what these jars are. Tell me down in the comments if I'm missing something, but are they clear glass? And we're kind of seeing like sliced fruits and stuff like floating inside water. Is that what I'm looking at? Or are these like opaque jars with like painted designs on the outside of them? For some reason, these romantic country books have these a lot. And across all of the pages, I still cannot tell what they are. I do kind of like the idea that they're water with like fruit floating inside. So I'm just going to sort of color these in with this slate blue. And then I'm going to add in my white Posca pen to just sort of sell the fact that they're kind of glass jars here in the corner. Now, if I do have one regret, after this page is finished, this is the only place that I used this blue in. And I'm kind of breaking my own rule here. Like I should have found a spot on the left side of the page to use this blue, even in kind of a subtle way, but I didn't do that. So, it doesn't stand out terribly, but definitely broke my own rule here without, kind of adding it in at least one, if not more spaces on the page. So, oh well. So now I'm going to kind of focus in here on the middle of the page, and I started to color some of these horses and these nutcrackers. But again, I was kind of getting tripped up and overwhelmed by the amount of kind of individual bits to color here in this central area. So I decided to go back to the same technique that I employed earlier, which was to color those sorts of kind of known items all at once and then fill in the gaps later. So I kind of went in and I colored in the horse heads and some browns. I colored in the skin of the nutcrackers, some of the clothing articles in black and in my browns. And then I went back to my metallic markers to fill in some of the accents. So kind of got that, foundational items kind of out of the way. And then I went back in with my reds and my greens and just started to fill in those gaps. And I just kind of found it a lot more approachable to kind of tackle it in that way. All right, now at this point, I'm pretty much done with the objects on the page, but I have a huge amount of wall space or the background to still fill in. So what color should I use? So I'm going to bring out my handy dandy color chart. And again, this double sprayed And again, this double spread is very, very busy. There's lots of objects on this page, so I've decided to use a neutral. I've decided to use this Putty Beige, which is a wonderful neutral that reads kind of beige but has a little bit of a brown undertone, and it pairs really, really well with my French grays. So I'm going to start with an all-over foundational layer of Putty Beige. Then I'll go back in with Fray 30% and 50% to create some of those shadows behind all of these objects, again, selling that three-dimensional effect. Now this step is very, very tedious, especially when you're like right at that 1 yard line, like so close to being done, but it's definitely worth putting in the time and effort here for the final results. And just to make life a little bit easier, I decided to blend all of that out with just a touch of baby oil on the end of a cotton swab, which will blend out all of those shadows. And then to just kind of top it off, you can go back in and you can add any additional touches that you want, either with your pencils or with those nifty metallic markers. And that's really it for this page, guys. Like I said, Christmas is in just a few short days. So if you do like Christmas or any of the other magical holidays around this time of year, I do wish you the very, very best. Happy holidays to all. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that thumbs up button and consider subscribing if you're new. Now, I'm super, super close to 20,000 subscribers, and I'd love to reach that milestone. So if you know someone who would enjoy my videos, please share it with them on social media. I have lots more tutorials on my channel, so if you're looking for something specific, definitely check that out. And next week, I'm planning to share a special year in review video, just like we did at the end of 2017 last year. So be sure to tune in for that. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Happy holidays. I'll see you later. Bye.